Welcome back to another Top Floor Women replay. I'm Melanie Ake, founder of Everyday Leaders, co-founder of Scale for Women, and co-sponsor for Top Floor Women. Top Floor Women is Indy's Southside premier networking community. We've had such a great turnout for our live in-person networking events. We meet the first Wednesday of every month. You can go to topfloorwomen.org to register for our monthly programs. You can become a coffee sponsor or register to be a speaker and share your expertise. You can watch the replay right here, right now. Thank you for being a part of our growing Indy Southside premier women's networking events.
So I'm happy to be here. So today we're going to talk about some things. Hopefully you guys are going to do some talking as well. But as Melanie mentioned, 9 years ago I started my own business. I had been a teacher before that. I started out in science research because I thought I'm going to be a researcher. This is what I'm going to do. And and then I got into working and I couldn't go do field work because I had little kids at home. So I didn't get to go do field work, so I was stuck in the lab, and I'm like, well, this sucks. Everybody's gone out in the field, and I'm sitting here talking to tree roots. This is boring. But while I was working there at Butler, I decided to go and get my teaching degree. And I was like, I never wanted to teach in my entire life. But I think I did. My sister and I grew up, we always played school, and I even graded her papers that I made her do. And so I think teaching was something I always wanted to do. I just didn't know I wanted to do it, and so I had to listen to my heart. And when I went into teaching high school science, I loved teaching. Oh my gosh, I loved it. I was there at 6:30 in the morning, and I would sometimes be there till 6 o'clock at night. I remember one time I had a student that they had a quiz that they had to pass. It was a pass or fail. Either you pass it or you don't. And I remember the last day of school, this student was still trying to pass this quiz. And we were there probably till 6 o'clock at night. Her mom was coming down. Where is she? I said, she's here. Because that was, cell phones were just around, but I still didn't let them in my classroom. And so her mom didn't know she was still trying to take this quiz and pass it. And I was willing to be there and help that student to do that. Not for myself. I wanted her to feel that success. And so I loved teaching. And then, other entities got involved in education that know nothing about education or kids. And so I started to hate the thing I was most passionate about. And my oldest daughter was graduating college and had a 2-year-old. And I said, so I can stay home and watch him. Can I discipline him? Can I, if I need to, can I spank him or put, yes, okay, well, I will do that because I can't do that at school. So I left teaching. And I kept my grandson for a couple years. And then I had always kind of dabbled in scrapbooking, but I didn't have time because I was so busy doing everything else. And then I found an organization that helped people with their photos and their memories, and that's when I started my business. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I got to this. So I still get to teach. So today, hopefully, is going to be some education for you guys, some things that maybe you hadn't thought about or really spent time thinking about, but also giving you some paths that you can perhaps walk down or think about. So I want to talk about what your legacy is, okay? And a lot of times these words get thrown around, and people are like, wow, what do you mean? What's my legacy? So we all have a story. I loved your story and about, how you came into your business. But if we don't share those words with people, if she just took and showed a picture of her business or whatever, people are going to, okay, cool. But if they don't know the words behind it, if they don't know the heart behind it, it doesn't mean anything. So how many of you guys have gone to your ancestors, to your grandmas or your moms or someplace, and you've pulled out a photo album and looked at it? And you have no idea who these people are. Why did they take a picture of this tractor? Why are there chickens all over Grandma's feet? All these stories that we have. Some of our grandmas were really good about writing some words in it, but it was usually in cursive, and so as kids we couldn't read Grandma's cursive. But if we didn't get a chance to sit down and ask them questions, or I think about mine, my grandparents didn't necessarily have photo albums. One set of grandparents took a lot of slides and movies. And so I remember on Sunday afternoons, everybody would come over and we'd all sit there and watch the little bitty square on the wall of these pictures of their travels. My other grandparents, I don't know that I ever saw a photo album in their house. And so I didn't know stories from the past. I knew the stuff that was going on, and I would ask a lot of questions. But I didn't have those stories. And so part of when I decided to start my business was that I had started losing some of those relatives and those stories. If you think about back in pioneer days and things, oral history was passing on those stories. And hieroglyphics that are found on walls and things, those all have a story behind it, but unless you know what that story is, it's just pictures, and people take a picture of it and go, oh, this is cool, I saw this. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? And so I really started to go, I don't want to lose those stories. My papa would always sit and tell us all these stories. I don't know if any of them were true, but he told me, so I'm sure they were partly true. But when he was getting older, I sat down with him one day when we were visiting, and I tape recorded. I kept asking him all these stories. I said, okay, tell me about this story. Tell me this. Tell me this. Because, there was never a test for it, so I didn't necessarily remember it. But I thought, one of these days I'm going to lose that. And so I recorded all those. Now, the tape I've hidden somewhere very, very good in my mess, but I do have it somewhere. And I know somebody who can convert that tape to something more current so that I can listen to it. But then as more and more of my relatives started to pass away, I went, I'm going to lose those stories. And even the most recent one that I had, back in 2013, it'll be 7 years. So back 8 years ago or so, just after I'd started my business, my dad did not go to the doctor. He hated to go to the doctor. And so every time he went to the doctor, it was like, oh, and by the way. So we always had, I've got appendicitis. Oh, you have, blocked arteries. And then, oh, you have bronchitis. Oh, you have cancer. And so we dealt with all these things. So when Dad was going through cancer treatment in Michigan, I would drive up every 3 weeks to go spend the week with them while he went through his 1-hour treatments a day. And I had taken my mom's box of photos, because I knew my parents had photos. She had them in a box with no organization or anything. So I gave her a scrapbook. I said, here, Mom, put these pictures in there. Well, I brought the scrapbook and the box of photos back. And I did it myself, but I didn't write in it. Even though I knew a lot of the stories, I wanted them to write it, so I had their handwriting as well. So while I was going up to Michigan, I took one of those scrapbooks with me. And I would sit there with my dad, pictures he had taken when he was a young boy, teenager, when he was starting, his life as a husband. And I asked him the stories, and so I was recording all the stories so that I could write down what he was telling me, what went with which picture. I didn't know all the stories necessarily. I knew bits and pieces. I knew he didn't. I was one of 2 girls in the family. I knew he wouldn't let me do certain things, because you're a girl. Girls don't do that. And then I'm like, but you drove down to Key West and then went to Cuba and you slept on the side of a road in a boat. And wait a minute. Oh, now I know why you won't let me do that, because you were stupid. And you didn't want to let me do that, but those are the things that I was finding out. So anyway, I started writing down things about my dad's life so that I could have that to then pass on to my kids. So I did a lot of that, and I started to fill in the gaps. There's still some things I don't know, And, you know, a lot of that was before my mom knew my dad, so now that he's gone, she doesn't know the stories either. And last week I just lost my aunt, his oldest sister, and so now I've only got an aunt and uncle left on that side of the family that I'm hoping can fill in some more of those gaps. But, you know, that's what happens is we've got a legacy and we just lose that because we don't ask people. And so that's part of what I wanted to kind of talk about today. So, all right. So how many people are in here are part of the sandwich generation? How many of you still have parents or older relatives still around and have younger kids or grandkids and things, okay? So a lot of us are, and if you're not, you will be at some point. So to the world outside, our world is perfect. The peanut butter goes right out to the smooth, perfect thickness on there, right out to the edges. The jelly's spread out. It's not dripping outside. This is the image we provide to our people that we come into contact with, right? Perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then this is what it really looks like. Our lives are a mess. But when we get dressed and we come to a meeting in the morning or we go to work, people see this and they're like, you are all put together. And you're like, if you only knew. I mean, this morning, you know, I don't normally get up early, or I don't set an alarm anymore, but I still heard the grandkids getting up, you know, and I thought about those days of, oh my gosh, having to get the kids up and take them. And, you know, even the school line today with all the cars, I'm like, put your kid on a bus. Then you don't need to do this. I'm like, my kids, I never took my kids to school. They got picked up at 7 o'clock. They got home at 4 o'clock. They rode the bus. I'm like, see you later. I got to go to work. And I'm like, oh my gosh. No wonder we put all these extra stresses on ourselves, right? And so this is what the sandwich generation is to us. We're trying to be the perfect daughter still. And then we're trying to be the perfect mom and the perfect wife and perfect. When Dad was going through cancer treatments, we just one of the things he said to the social worker one day is he said, I just want normal again. She said, you know normal is a setting on a dryer and it lasts 45 minutes. That has become my mantra because our life, we want it to be perfect, but there is nothing that's perfect. And so we just have to learn to accept and embrace and live in the moment we have. And the story that comes from it is going to make you who you are. And if you're perfect, I just finished reading John Maxwell's Failing Forward. If you've never had a mistake, you're never going to know success. And I'm going, well, no wonder I've done all those things because it taught me how to be better. But that's the thing is if we never have a mistake, we're not going to know how to get better. And if we don't share the mistakes with our family, the things that got us here, no, I wasn't always perfect. I didn't always do all these things. They're going to think, I can't measure up to what, Mom's doing. I can't measure up to Grandma. Yes, you can, because you don't have to be somebody else. So women typically are the keepers of the stories and the storytellers, and we have to pass those on to the future generations. And so it may be even within the business that you're in, it may be in other community organizations that you're a part of, it may be the family, but those stories get passed on. And those are the things that when you think back to, what do I remember about Grandma's house or great-grandma's house, it's those stories. Or there was that one candy dish that had a lid, and Grandma couldn't hear when you'd ask questions, but you just lift that lid. What are you doing? Never mind, I didn't want that candy. But we all have memories of things like that, but we don't have pictures of it. Nowadays, we're constantly taking pictures of every little thing that we do, but we don't have pictures of those things, but they're still vivid in our heads. And so we need to pass them on to those future generations. All right, so, mom to child, grandma to child. I just added number 7 to my fold 3 weeks ago. An aunt, and then sisters to siblings. Because as the oldest child, Oftentimes those younger siblings don't know things, or they experience things after you go off to college and they fill you in on the gaps that you missed while you were off, adulting. So I know I mentioned that I wanted you guys to bring a photo or your phone with some photos on it, because that's where most people have their photos. But think about this for a minute. When you take a photo, there's a reason. Now, granted, it may just be so that you can remember the price or information to pass on to somebody. That stuff you can get rid of, and you should do that periodically. We do what we call a 15-minute digital dump. That, if you're sitting in traffic or you're sitting waiting for the kids in the school line, that you could be deleting all those pictures that you don't need to keep, so that you're not doing this, for 20 minutes trying to find that one picture that somebody needs. Not that I've ever, I've not never met any of you guys before, so I'm not judging at all. But here's the other thing. With the photos you take, don't judge what you think other people are going to see in it. Because you may take a photo that's completely unrelated, but it sparks a memory for them. Oh my gosh. I know you were talking about a tree branch that just fell. And so, all the storm pictures that maybe you've gotten, people are going, I remember when I was this little in this tree, it was my favorite tree, and blah, blah, blah. And so all of those kinds of images you have are going to emit some type of feeling for people, either happiness or joy or sadness or anger or whatever. So when you take a picture, there's a reason you did that. But how often do we then attach the words to it so that we can remember even a week down the road, why did I take this picture? Okay? So when you add the words to the image, it helps to build that bridge. And it just so happened when we were doing this last week, when Melanie had asked me about this, I'm in Bible study with her every morning, and we're reading Joshua right now, and it talked about Joshua 4, about creating handles. And I'm like, that's what we're doing, is we're making those handles to pass things on to the next generation, or to get them back from previous generations. And so in the story, it was talking about the stones of remembrance that they had back in Joshua's day. And so there's lots of different ways. I'm from Michigan originally, and I know when you go up to Lake Superior and all the rocks on the beaches, which is my favorite place in the world to be, and people get mad when people pile the stones. You're not supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who said? Who said you're not supposed to? And so piling those stones, it helps us to remember something. And that's what we're doing with our life as well. So we're probably stuck someplace here in the middle, that sandwich generation, that we've got these stories from before, but there are stories going to come after us as well. And so we're helping to make sure that that foundation gets passed on. So it was kind of serendipitous how that all came together, that we were talking about, legacy and handles and stones of remembrance. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe how this all came together, which is how I kind of let my life go. I used to be very much, no, I have to do it this way. And I'm like, you know what? It's going to happen the way it's going to happen, so I need to stop stressing about it so much. All right. So I want to share a little bit before I give you guys a turn to share. So how much do you know about your story of your elders? So I told you the story with my dad, and I spent a lot of time asking my dad stuff only because there were pictures. With my mom, I didn't have many pictures. My mom was from Mississippi originally. They moved to Michigan when she was in 9th grade. And she'll be 83 this November. So I'll go and I'll ask my mom, because, I'm sitting here talking to Dad all the time, and I'm thinking, Mom's probably over here going, why is she not asking me anything? So then I say, okay, Mom, tell me. And she's like, I don't know. Well, that's why I don't ask you, because you tell me you don't know. She probably does, but there's things, a lot of times there's stories from our life we forget on purpose because we don't want to be reminded of those things, okay? So, story with my mom. Again, I did not have any photos, so I had to pull them up. So does anybody know what this is a picture of? No.
Oh, it's one of those dish towel things that you...
Nope.
Oh, it looks like...
So my mom's from Mississippi. They had a cotton farm. That's a cotton sack that the pickers would peel or pull through the field. Now, I always love to tease my mom. So when my mom got old enough, she was a cotton hoer. Hoer. But I say my mom was a cotton hoer. So, play on words. Anyway, so that's a cotton sack. And so I grabbed a couple pictures. Now, these are not of my mom because I don't have any pictures of my mom with this. I mean, they weren't out in the field. Here, let me take your picture real quick while we pick cotton. But she would have to miss weeks of school to go and pick cotton and go out in the field. Cotton plants are not tall. So I think about this of my mom bending over like this, and I think about her sore back that she has all the time now. I'm like, that's probably why, right? And a lot of times when you see pictures, it's usually of African Americans picking cotton, but my grandparents, they had a 100-acre farm with cotton, and so they would go out and pick. And, so when I go back and I try to find stuff, I'm like, but I don't have pictures of that of my mom. And she was little, so little, and this is where I did not have the picture. My mom does remember my grandma pulling her on the cotton sack as a baby. I wish I had that picture, but I don't. So, like I said, I don't know if those grandparents even had photo albums. I don't remember ever seeing any. And then my mom was the baby of the family, so obviously she didn't get anything. My oldest aunt got it, which then she gave it to her daughter. And then they had a fire, and so she lost some of it. And then when I did see that cousin, I don't know, 7 years ago, asked her if I could take the photos. No, you can't take these. So I took and I scanned a few of them, but she would never let me have them, and then she passed away, and her husband I've reached out to him multiple times trying to get those, and so all of my mom's history, as far as I know, is in the trash, because they didn't care about it. He didn't have any connection to that family. So I can only imagine that story, but I keep asking my mom, hoping that story will come up, that she'll remember some things. When she was in school, she played basketball, and they played half-court basketball, because, back in the 50s, that was not something that girls did a lot yet. But she played basketball, and so I know she used to be very active. Nowadays, I can't get her out of her chair to come for a walk. But those are things that, this is part of the life, I think, that she didn't appreciate because she wasn't taught from her relatives. And so now when I go back and try to fill in those gaps, it makes it really, really difficult to try to find those. So, legacy is something that can be hard. I'm not going to say that it's always going to be smiles and laughter. There's going to be tears and anger and all kinds of things that come out with that. But it's very therapeutic to know that that's why that stuff happens. And that's one of the things I've learned over the last several years is that, why do I feel like this when this happens? Well, there's a reason tied to it, but I have to accept that. And no, it doesn't make me it doesn't define who I am. It makes me who I am and how I come out on the other side. Okay, so what's the story behind your photos? So I asked you guys to bring photos, phone or otherwise. So I want you to just take a couple minutes, more than a couple minutes, but I want you to share with the person next to you a photo that you have and tell the story behind it. And then that person may have some things that they may want to ask you some questions about with it, or that it may have something that sparks a memory for them that they share. So I just want you guys to take a little bit of time to share a photo that you have with each other. question that it's not hard for a group of women to sit and go down rabbit holes? If I talk to a group of men for this, you know, they'd like talk for 30 seconds and go, okay, well, I'm done. But it was so interesting hearing all the different stories going on. And I was glad to see that some of them were older stories. I know up here they were sharing about her grandparents' store. And, you know, I heard you guys talking about your ancestors and the stories. And so that's a lot of times where we go. We go to those old stories. But one day your stories are going to be old stories. And so that's the thing, is we have to remember that what we're living today in our life, we want to pass that on to our kids and our grandkids as well. And if you don't have that, then somebody wants to know those stories because they were there with you. And so don't always go back to the old stories you remember. Start telling your story to people. So that's what I loved about you being able to share your dream of your business and how you got to that point. Is that's a story that people need to know, okay? So when you're talking about your story and you're looking at your photos, you need to have a plan, okay? Because often we just talk about it and there's no test, so nobody remembered, and they're like, what was that thing somebody said about this? And you don't remember. So when you're taking photos, those 6 key words that you always learned in school: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Make sure you're at least recording that information. On a photo, that's called metadata. That's the stuff that lives in the back dark corners so that you can go back and find those things. So on most of your phones, you have a way that you can add a description and add the words to it. Because if you don't have your phone set up right, you know, the date on it's wrong. So it's like, I didn't take that day. Because if you uploaded it from someplace, it takes that day. And your phone says, that's the day you want to remember. No, you don't. You want to know what the day it was. But nobody knows how to go in and change that on their phones to the day the photo was actually taken. So our phones think they're smarter than us. And JP the Geek can probably sees this all the time with their clients, is it's like, okay, no, I don't want the date it was modified. I want the date it was actually the original date it was taken, not the date the photo was created on my phone or my computer. And so a lot of what I do with clients is I have to help find those dates and go in and change them. And unfortunately, there's not like just a magic wand that you wave and it just changes automatically everything. You have to go on in every single photo and do that. And so it takes time, and people are like, I don't have time for that. Okay, so then that's where they hire a service to help get that done, because I don't mind doing that. But who the people are. So I've got some pictures from my husband's family that when his mom's photos were the first ones I actually worked on. So they had 8 children, and I think we were up to 26 grandchildren. And then now I don't know how many great-grandchildren, but both his parents are passed. And so what I did when we were moving her out of the house is I gathered all the pictures. Because a couple of my nieces, their mom had died of breast cancer, and they're like, we want those pictures of mom. I said, nobody's taking anything out of the house picture-wise. I'm taking it all. And so I took it all, and I scanned everything. And then I divvied them in. I felt like a card dealer in Vegas, because I'm going, this is Mike, this is Bob, this is, and I was divvying them out to who gave them those pictures. Now, my husband's bag, our bag of pictures, most of them were doubles that I had already given her, so I had them. But if the main person in that picture, I wanted them to have the pictures. So I made 10 bags. So I had the 8 kids, one of dad's side, one of mom's side. Actually, there was another, and then I have no idea who these are. And so I gave everybody their bag of photos and a flash drive with all of the pictures. So they got every single picture, not just their families. So then I had this bag of, I don't know who these people are, and they had 7 boys and 1 girl. So I mean, the girl was easy to figure out, but the boys kind of all looked similar? And you're like, I don't know which one this is. And then you get to grandkids and you're like, I had 3 girls, and I'm like, I couldn't sometimes tell from my girls because they wore the same outfit, and I'm like, I don't remember which one that is. So what we did one Thanksgiving is I had all those pictures of the unknowns on a flash drive, and we plugged them into the TV, and that was our entertainment. Okay, whose baby's this? All right, wrote down a name and dates, and so that's how we figured it out. Well, then we had some of his mom's family from when she was growing up, and they were from Jersey, and I didn't know, so I uploaded them to my cloud storage, and I shared it with his cousin, and I said, okay, who is this? And so then they started adding names to those things. And so, this doesn't have to be a one-person job. You enlist everybody to help you, and it's a great way to, do some things on, my battery's running low, I'm plugged in, what the heck? This isn't plugged all the way in. There we go. But it was a great way to sit around and, if you didn't want to play cards or you didn't want to, watch football or whatever, that was a great way to share stories and to get all the different generations involved. And a lot of times, even like my kids, my girls are, if they could, they would come in my house and throw so much stuff out there like, Mom, why are you keeping this? Why are you keeping this? Because you always come and ask for something and I have it, so that's why I keep it. But I don't know that my girls are going to want the pictures. And I'm like, well, you should, but my grandkids, I'm doing it for them. So I'll skip the girls. And my grandson, who started his senior year today, oh my gosh. He came one day and he saw a picture laying in my office and he said, oh my gosh, the genetics are strong in this family. He says, Mom looks just like me. I said, no, you look just like your mom. But he looked at his aunts and his mom, and he looked at their kids now, his cousins, and he's like, oh my gosh. He says, do you have more pictures like this? Yes, hallelujah. He wants to keep these pictures. And he's a boy, so I'm hoping the girls want to have them more than they do. But that's what I'm doing, is it's an investment for my family. I'm not doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for them. And so just asking those 6 questions will help you have a story to go along with it. All right, so capturing answers. I know I heard several people say that I heard them saying that they had letters from grandparents or, old people in the war that would send letters back. How many times can you look at an envelope or you look at something handwritten and you go, that's Aunt Hazel's writing, I recognize it. I mean, I know I can still do that as well. My mom, horrible speller. I know if she writes probably, it's got an E instead of an A in it. But that's just the way my mom was, and that's one of the stories that I remember about that. So written, we often can get, but nowadays we all have a recorder on our phones. We can record those stories as well and keep their voice. And now we can take those and we can attach it to a QR code and put it into a digital book, and people can listen to them tell the story. So you don't have to. And then with video as well. And so you can capture all those new formats and still bring those stories to life. And it's not that difficult, but if you've never done it, people are like, I don't know how to do this. Well, we all know how to use our phones. It's just a couple of clicks to get that then changed to a format to be able to share that. So when you start looking at your pictures, first off, who in here has every single picture in an album, documented, in order? Okay, good. Well, see, none of us do, including myself, and I do this for, the cobbler's children have no shoes. I do work on mine every once in a while, but it's a whole lot easier to work on somebody else's. You know why? Because there's no emotional attachment. Because I get into that box, and this is what I tell my clients, you have 3 seconds to decide which pile that picture goes in. And I'm their task, no, 3 seconds, stop, no story. Because I could have let you guys would have talked for an hour today about one picture. And that's what happens when I get into mine, is it's like, oh, I remember this. Where's that outfit at? I need to go find this, blah, 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 It's like when Mom used to send you your room to clean, and 4 hours later you were still sitting there with Everything around you going, oh yeah, I haven't done anything yet. So when you're looking at pictures, we do an ABCs. What are your album-worthy pictures? So I said, every picture you take has a story behind it, but is it album-worthy? Maybe not. And then you've got the box pictures. The ones I don't want to throw away. So my mom sewed, I sewed, my mom made I made my dresses for prom and stuff. Mom took a picture of me and my boyfriend, cut off our heads every single time. I have a nice picture of my dress though, so I keep that because that's the only picture I have, but I don't have a head in it, you know. But those go in a box. They don't necessarily go in the album because there's a story that goes with that I want to remember. And then the third set of pictures is they can go in the can. It's okay to throw pictures away. But back in the day again, you bought a camera, you bought film, you processed that film, you might have got doubles or triples, and you hang on every one of those. And it's like, I don't need 3 copies of kids sitting at the beach with their backs to me playing in the sand. But we keep them because I spent money for that. Okay? So it's okay to throw some things away. And there's actually been research to show that when you let go of things, not just photos, but even things in your house, Paula can attest to this with organizing, is holding on to those things causes you also physical ailments. And so when you let go of those things, it's a whole lot easier to lose 20 pounds of picture weight than it is body weight, but it still gives you that same good feeling. So when you're sitting down to start going through things, divide them up into 3 categories and put them into boxes temporarily, and then you take those album-worthy ones and you put them into some sort of an album, whether it be a traditional scrapbook or you get them scanned and put them into a digital book that you can then share. But write the stories with it as well. Don't just have a book of pictures. I know a lot of people will make yearbooks of all the pictures and it's just the pictures. And you're like, well, I can tell that's Christmas. I had somebody that wanted me to go through and pick out the pictures, and I'm like, I don't know the stories behind your pictures though. So, you know, you guys may all be cracking up in this picture, and I go, well, that's junk, they're not looking. I don't realize that the dog just took a little dump in front of the Christmas tree, and you're all trying to take your picture, and you see that, and you're laughing. So, you know, I'd go, I'm gonna throw that picture away, and they go, no, that was our favorite picture. And I'm like, I don't know that. So that's why I can come in and help my clients, but I can't necessarily just do it all for them because I don't know the stories behind it. So, all right. So then you need to protect that legacy. So you've done all this work, you've put them into photo albums. How many people here have what we call the sticky albums or the magnetic photo albums someplace with your pictures? Okay? Great invention back in the 60s and 70s. All right, this is going to be awesome. If you go back and open those now, how many of the pictures look like mud? Because the chemicals in that stickiness are leaching out of the photos, and so there's nothing left in that picture now. But we thought it was great back then, okay? Just like we thought, you know, iPhones were the greatest thing today. Tomorrow Apple may decide, no, we're going to change and do this. And you're like, what? But this is what I'm used to. So you need to have a way to protect that legacy. So besides the ABCs, we also talk about 3-2-1 system. You should have 3 copies of every image. So it may be 1 in an album. You may have 1 on a DVD or a flash drive or on an external hard drive, or God forbid, saved all on your computer hard drive and your computer dies and then you're like, I need to find somebody to recover my computer. So 3 copies so that you've got a backup. 2 different formats. So if one is paper and another is digital, that counts. If you don't have a paper photo, you can have 2 different digital copies. One saved on a hard drive, one saved in a cloud. Flash drives, although flash drives, you know, you walk around, look like you can make a necklace with teeth with all the flash drives you have walking around with your pictures. And one of those copies should be stored off-site. For most people, that means cloud storage. Or stored somewhere else that's not your house. So if a tornado or fire or flood hits your house, you want it somewhere else. So you send it to somebody else in the family that doesn't have any kind of natural disasters. Good luck finding that. Or a safe deposit box in the bank. So that's what we tell people, is you should have multiple copies so that you can go back and recover that. Okay? Now, let me talk just a little bit about that cloud storage. How many of you guys have read the terms and policies of Amazon Photos, Google Photos, Shutterfly, whatever other services you might have photos on? Has anybody read all of those details? No, we just click on it and say, yep, I'll accept. Okay, so a couple things, not picking on, it's written in their policies. Apple, for iCloud, it says this is a syncing process. iCloud is not a backup. With Apple, if you've got a photo on your phone, you have it on your iPad, you have it on your iCloud, it shows up there because those devices all sync and talk to one another. But if you remove that photo from your phone, it's gone from all those other sources. So Apple does not claim to be a backup, but that's what a lot of people use it for. And you can probably attest to this a lot, right? Amazon Photos, Google Photos, it's free. I can store all my stuff here. Nothing in life is free. It comes with strings. Those two services can data mine. So they see your photo, and then next thing you know, you start seeing ads for, let's say you're going to the beach and you start seeing ads for beach umbrellas and beach wagons, and you're like, how did that happen? Because you just shared your whole world with them through where your photos are. And there was a story where somebody was driving down the road and saw a billboard, and they're like, wait, that's my picture.
Oh my goodness.
Because they tell you, we will use this for marketing. So those free services, and if they decide, hey, we want to get out of the picture business, we don't want to do this anymore, we're going to shut it down, they can delete all your stuff. And there's no legacy to pass on with it. So if you die and nobody knows your password, they go in and just delete all that.
But don't share your passwords.
Right? So there are other ways to get around that, but people think, oh, I got all this free storage, and it's not free. It comes with strings. And that's the thing that I hate for people is, yes, it's a great way to share stuff, but your photos are compressed. So they're not high res. So if somebody wants to take and make a copy of it, or they got a picture of the whole family at the beach and they want to make a canvas, and it comes back and you're like, well, that doesn't look as clear as the picture did. Yeah, because you were looking on a screen that's this big, so it looks great there. You blow it up to the size of that board back there, it's not going to look great. And that's what people don't understand. So the legacy components, there has to be a way to share that. So one of the vendors that I use, and when I say my photos are in my cloud, it is a private, permanent, I own storage. And they have set up that I have an account manager, so if I die, my daughter takes over my account. Here's the really cool thing I love about this, is they can continue then to add memories to my account. They just can't go in and delete anything I ever put in there. So if I have embarrassing pictures of them or that haircut that they hated, it's like, sorry, Charlie, these are in here forever. You can't get rid of it. But the company that I use, when he started this, he was a venture capitalist. And so he made sure he really invested in family. And so it is private. I can set mine up so that people can see only certain albums. It's permanent. It's guaranteed my lifetime plus 100 years. And as things continue to progress, they're always looking to make it better. It's got a great sharing component that I can go out and share a link, or I can send just photos to people. The other cool thing is this company also then has a way that you can design books, and you can make cards, and you can do all kinds of stuff. And so my photos are already there, and I can add the stories, and I don't have to worry about them tomorrow going, you know what, we're done with this. It was fun while it lasted, but we're going to close our doors. So
What was the name of that again?
the company is called Forever. And I'm going to pass around some examples of some holiday cards that they just released for this year so you can kind of see. And this company, I mean, the thing I love about it too is if I get out my phone, okay, so you guys are all sitting here sharing photos on your phones and stuff. So if I pull mine out and I pull up my phone, I've actually got my Forever on here. So every single picture that I've got in my cloud, I can pull up on my phone. It looks like it's on my phone, but they're not on my phone. So I can still share them. And it looks like, you know, so I can go in here and pull up pictures, you know, and that's in my cloud storage. It's not on my phone. So if I lose my phone, they're already there. So that's one of the things I like to use, is because they do understand legacy. How many of you guys are hearing all kinds of things about AI right now? And does that make you excited or scared out of your wits? Both, yeah. I mean, there are some cool things, but at the same point, so like when I couldn't find that picture of my mom, you know, picking cotton, so I did an AI. I'm like, well, let's look. They had, you know, 20-something moms in a field and billowy. I'm like, no, this is not what I want. I want, you know, 1950s picking cotton in Mississippi in a field, not some photo shoot thing. Couldn't find anything that I needed. So that was, you know, okay, AI didn't necessarily work there. The other thing with AI that scares me, though, is that every time you put a picture out on the web, they're using that to build their AI capabilities. And so, you know, you put your pictures out there and they see all your faces, and then pretty soon they're like, oh, remember those CSI, all the things on CSI that you get and how they can scan the streets and find people? They're using all of that to build that. I'm not so sure I want that to happen for my stuff yet, so I'm glad that my pictures are not out on the web somewhere. I'm very careful. I don't typically post my grandkids' pictures on my Facebook page because their moms can do that, but I don't, because I don't want to be involved in, you know, their faces ending up on a poster someplace. So read about. Are you listening? Your phones right now, they've got microphones on them. They're listening. You say, I need to go to the grocery store, and pretty soon something pop up. Hey, go visit Kroger. Here, this is what their sales are. So your phones are listening to you all the time too. Alexas, things like that. I know I won an Alexa once. I still have not taken out of the box. I'm like, yeah, I do not want that thing in my house listening to me. There may be some things I don't want repeated. That and your social media platforms. So everything that you share. So those are some things that you need to think about with that. I mentioned compression, deletion. You know, you think it's gone. Just because it's gone off your devices does not mean it's gone. Somebody out there has saved that someplace. It's not a Getty image that, you know, the whole world wants to see, but it's out there. And data mining. So that's another thing that I like about Forever, is they do not data mine. So they're not going to be sending you all kinds of ads for things. All right, so just a little bit. So we talked about our legacy. So these are all the things that I've been or am at some point in my life. It's all part of who I want my family to remember me as. Some of the good with the bad. To know Grandma wasn't always, you know, stellar student, or didn't always follow the rules that G-Pop and Gigi told her to do. But there was a reason for that. I do have some cards, so I mentioned, so Forever does cards, and so I'm going to pass these around. Now, on the back, but they have different weights, so the photos feel different. These are the brand new holiday cards that they just came out with. So they've got templates, they're all set up. When I make mine, I put pictures on the front. I usually write my little snippet of a story on the back, and last year I actually put a QR code on the back that tied people to all the other pictures from the year, so I couldn't fit, you can't make them so small they can't see them. And so I gave them, there was a QR code that they could go and see the rest of our year's pictures. So I'll just pass those around so you guys can see those. I did not bring any of my books, photo books I've made. Those cards work out somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.25 to $1.75 a piece. You go to the grocery store now and you buy a card and it's $4. The other cool thing with this service is they also now in this platform they have their address cards or address labels, so I can actually get the envelopes addressed and return address, so I don't have to write anything. I just have to stick a stamp and stick the card in, which I know can be very impersonal as well. However, depending on how many Christmas cards you send, or if you send Christmas cards for your business, it's a great way to get some information out. If you a realtor and you sold somebody a house, you could actually grab a couple pictures of theirs and you could make their card for that and send it. But I still, this weekend I've got a group of gals coming to my retreat house to scrapbook. So I still do traditional scrapbooking and memory keeping that way as well, but I also do a lot of digital stuff because I'm a little behind and I need to get caught up on things. So that's me, my business. Talked before about a play on words. So when people say, "Who's your photo organizer?" in Indiana, they get that. Most people go, "What?" But if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them, and thank you for letting me come and share with you today.